Hello, thank you for joining us. It's Tuesday. We're super excited to be here with People for Bikes. Ash is here. She is presenting a very important topic, very safe and dear to our heart, which is more riders, better riding, and rider safety campaign. That's the title of today's webinar. Across the country, unprecedented numbers of individuals and families are discovering the joy of riding a bike. And we want to continue to support this growth in ridership. So People for Bikes is launching a bicycle safety campaign to promote responsible riding. And we want to make sure retailers are in the know and can work with People for Bikes on best tips, tricks, and tools to help everyone get the most out of their ride. So Ash, thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you and we'll save the questions for the end.
Great. Thanks, Heather. Thanks so much for having me. I absolutely love having this opportunity to speak. I'm going to pull up my slides, and that's not my slides. Here's my slides, and there's the slideshow, and we're going to go back to the front. Okay, guys, it's like I haven't done this before a million times. Sorry about that. Okay. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm Ash Lovell. I am the Electric Bicycle Policy and Campaign Director for People for Bikes. I've been in this role for almost a year now, and it is an absolute dream come true. And I love working with everyone who is in the bicycle ecosystem, the riders, the retailers, the OEMs, everybody. This is just such a great community, and I am really honored to be a part of it. And I think a big thing that the whole community is thinking about is, what do we do about all these new people that are enjoying the great outdoors? How do we reduce user conflicts? How do we make sure everybody's having a good time and staying safe? So I'm here today to talk about People for Bikes Rider Safety Campaign. And my big call to action for you today is to reach out to People for Bikes, reach out to Heather. Tell us what you're seeing on the ground. Tell us what your customers are saying about safety. Let's keep this conversation going, and let's make sure that all voices are included in this super important topic. So I'll give you an overview about what People for Bikes is working on, and then I'll open up for questions at the end if we have any. And I will also have my contact information that we can send out as well. So you probably already know this, but People for Bikes is the Bicycle Industry Trade Association. We represent about 300 different supplier members from across the country who are all making different components and bikes and e-bikes. And I am really, really blessed to get to work on the e-bike side of the industry. So People for Bikes has a really bold vision. We want to make America the best cycling nation in the world. We know we're not there yet, but it's a really, really great goal for us to have. We're doing a lot of work on gathering data and baselining and figuring out, like, okay, so what is the best cycling nation in the world right now? What do we want the US to look like? We don't have to replicate what's happening in other places, but how do we figure out kind of what all those components are to make this the best cycling nation? We have three different kind of pillars that we're basing our work on: infrastructure, policy, and participation. And it's really important that all of these work together to kind of reinforce this big idea of making cycling better for everyone, making bicycling better and safer. So for infrastructure, our goal is to accelerate the construction of safe, fun, and connected places to ride. And safe, fun, and connected, those are super intentional words there. We know that the more connected infrastructure we have, the safer it is. We know that the more people that are riding, the safer it is. So I'll keep coming back to this infrastructure piece. Policy. We advance pro-bike and pro-bike business legislation. This is a big part of my work as the electric bicycle director. We do a lot of outreach at the local, state, and federal level, talking about bicycles and bicycling infrastructure, and e-bike incentives are a big topic right now. So lots of movement here, and we really understand the power of good policy. And then finally, participation, reducing barriers to access and welcoming more people to the joys of bicycling. This is a big deal, and we're seeing this incredible momentum that was built during the pandemic, one of the very few kind of silver linings of the last couple of years is that there are so many more people out recreating. There are so many more people riding. We've seen that e-bikes have been one of those ways to reduce those barriers to participation. And we want to keep kind of growing this momentum and maintain this great enthusiasm that we have for the great outdoors. So I am the electric bicycle director. This is probably something all of you know, but this is a really important piece of our work at People for Bikes and also the industry's work of explaining what is an electric bicycle. So there are three components for an electric bicycle that make it different than a traditional bicycle. The first is the computer, which lets you know how fast you're going, which lets you determine the amount of boost that you want on your e-bike. The battery. We have a really amazing battery recycling campaign that the industry launched last year, and also very happy to talk about that with anyone who's interested in that. We know that these lithium-ion batteries have been in the market for quite a while, and we know that the responsible thing to do is to figure out how we can recycle these batteries in a way that is sustainable, that makes sure that they stay out of landfills, and that makes sure that we're handling them safely. So these batteries are a huge component of the growth of the e-bike, and it's really important for us to make sure that we're handling them safely and responsibly. And then finally, the motor. And the motor is something that's closely tied to what different kind of bike that you have, what engages the motor. Is it the throttle? Is it pedal assist? So I'll go into that here in a second. I know this is super 101, but very important for us to really outline, what is an e-bike? So we have a 3-class system in terms of determining what kind of e-bike someone's riding. Class 1 is pedal assist, and its max assisted speed is 20 miles an hour, meaning that the motor cuts off at 20 miles an hour. Class 2 is throttle assist, so that's on your handlebar, and it can also go up to 20 miles an hour. And then class 3 is pedal assist, again, like class 1, and its max assisted speed is up to 28 miles an hour. And these are generally used for kind of long distance road commuting, getting people out of cars, onto their bikes, riding into work. I'm in the office today, which I absolutely love. I took my e-bike in, even though the weather here in Denver is not amazing. And it was just awesome to get to ride in and not arrive horribly sweaty and gross. So there's an overview of kind of like, here's what e-bikes are. And People for Bikes has been working on this Model 3 class legislation. It is now in 36 states. I'll go over that a little bit more later. But one thing that we've done a lot over the last few years is talk about what is an e-bike. What we haven't done as much is talk about what isn't an e-bike. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with these products that are not considered e-bikes by the Consumer Product Safety Commission or the National Highway Safety Traffic Administration, NHTSA. But it is important for us to know kind of like, okay, so what falls within this 3-class system and what doesn't. So this is just a quick kind of description of the traditional bicycle, or as we call them in the e-bike world, acoustic, type 1 e-bikes, type 2, type 3, as I went over before. These are really the main goal for having these distinctions is to make sure that electric bicycles can use bicycling infrastructure and that they're regulated similarly to traditional bicycles. Products that don't fit this classification system, things like mopeds, which you'll see at the bottom here, are regulated differently. So in order to operate a moped, you need to have a driver's license and a license plate, and you generally need to be 16 years of age. So just being really clear as we talk about, what is an electric bicycle, also defining what doesn't count as an electric bicycle. And again, nothing wrong with that. Just wanting to make sure that we are clear about why and how we're advocating for electric bicycles. So as I said, People for Bikes has been working on this for about 7 years. We have 36 states that have the Model 3 class legislation on the books, and we have 42 states overall that have legislation that defines an electric bicycle similarly to a bike, a traditional bicycle. There are a few states that we're still working on that have slightly problematic definitions of what an electric bicycle is, meaning that they're still categorized as motorized vehicles. So there's different kind of distinctions that they fit there. But this is a big piece of People for Bikes policy work, is working at the state level to really encourage a uniform definition of what an electric bicycle is. We also just had the Model 3 class legislation that defines class 1, 2, and 3 integrated into the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed last year. So lots of conversations about electric bicycles. I'm now going to move us into a little bit more about the growth of the market, which has just been absolutely incredible over the last few years. So you can see here, the value of the electric bicycle retail market has tripled over the past 3 years. But I'll say it again, it has tripled over the past 3 years, going from 236 million in 2019 to 770 million in 2021. And it does not look like it's slowing down, which is really exciting. It speaks to the power of this mode of transportation. There are so many reasons why electric bicycles are a compelling new form of transportation, a new recreational tool, a new way to go get some groceries or get your kids around. And we're really seeing this market just go from strength to strength, which is excellent news. So NPD, which is a data group that we all use a lot for these estimates, estimates that 420,000 electric bicycles were sold through retailers such as IBDs, mass market, and sporting goods stores in 2021. 2020 was 273, and 2019 was 123,000. So again, we are seeing incredible growth. We're seeing incredible enthusiasm for these products. And while traditional bicycles have been steadily climbing in their prices over the past few years, the average electric bicycle sold in 2021 was less expensive than it was in 2019. That being said, electric bicycles are generally more expensive than traditional bicycles because they have these different components and these different parts. But a big goal of ours as well, in terms of a policy piece, is really advocating for electric bicycle incentives, making sure that these products can get into the hands of people who want and need them, and making sure that they are accessible for everyone. So this just kind of reiterates a little bit of what we're seeing in the market. Over 2019, 2021 to 2020 to 2021, the graphic on the left kind of shows what all bicycle sales looked like, excluding e-bikes over the last few years. And we see this kind of hockey stick example in terms of e-bike sales. So granted, the amount of e-bikes being sold is still less than traditional bicycles, but they're really, really growing in popularity. And we love to have these charts. So I wanted to set the stage for this conversation about safety by showing how much enthusiasm there is for electric bicycles, how they're being integrated into state and local and federal policies, and what this kind of growth looks like. But I also want to set the stage by talking about the amount of outdoor recreation that has just blossomed in the US since the start of the pandemic. I alluded to this earlier. But the numbers are pretty staggering in terms of how many Americans are just getting outside and enjoying the great outdoors, whether they're riding, whether they're walking, whether they're hiking, they're climbing. So many more people discovered the benefits and the joys of being outside. And this is something that we all want to make sure we're able to maintain. So the Outdoor Industry Association pulled together some really great data on kind of what recreation looks like at a nationwide level. 53% of Americans aged 6 and over participated in outdoor recreation at least once in 2020, the highest participation numbers on record. And 7.1 million more Americans participated in outdoor rec in 2020 than in the year prior. And, we have tons of data on how great it is for people to be outside and recreating and enjoying the fresh air and moving their bodies, and how great that is for our physical health and our mental health and our emotional health. And I'm sure so many of us on the call really understand kind of personally how great that's been for us during the pandemic. This research the Outdoor Industry Association pulled together also shows that most of the outdoor industry's growth is coming from beginners. So this is huge. This is great. This is what we all want. We want more people out enjoying the great outdoors, people who hadn't been out before, people who might have led more indoor lives. But this also means that these new riders and hikers and climbers and, you know, everyone that's out enjoying, they need to learn the best etiquette for sharing the path and trail. They need to learn best practices so that they can be safe and keep others safe. And this is kind of a big motivator for us at People for Bikes for really encouraging this rider safety campaign. The other big piece here is that we've had this massive growth in outdoor recreation, and our infrastructure, our recreational infrastructure is behind. We don't have the resources and infrastructure that we need to really support a lot of this growth in recreation. So according to the National Recreation and Park Association, the agencies have had on average $17.4 million of deferred maintenance projects on their books. This means that trails are not being built. This means that existing trails are not being updated. This means that general recreational infrastructure is behind. And I think a lot of us know this and see this on a daily basis, but it's really compelling to kind of get these numbers in front of us to show not only is there this massive increase in outdoor rec, there's also this huge delta in terms of where people can go to really enjoy the great outdoors. So considering the more than 10,000 local park and recreation agencies of varying sizes and missions, the National Recreation and Park Association estimates the total value of deferred park and recreation maintenance at agencies across the nation exceeds more than $60 billion. So this is a lot of work we have ahead of us. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to advocate for more recreational infrastructure funding, more bicycle infrastructure funding. I will never be bored in this job doing policy for outdoor recreation. So increased outdoor recreation and insufficient recreational infrastructure means overcrowding and user conflict. In other words, we're gonna have a bad time. I don't know if anybody gets that South Park reference, but it's one of my favorites. This is the situation we're dealing with, right? This is what we are seeing at a national level in terms of starting to have conversations about user conflict on trails, overcrowding, especially in the e-bike space. We're starting to see communities consider banning e-bikes, and this isn't good for anybody. It really doesn't solve the problem of the increased outdoor recreation and insufficient recreational infrastructure. There are things that will help us solve this problem. The first is, again, advocating for more and better funding for recreation. So the 2021 bipartisan infrastructure bill authorized quite a lot of money for the Transportation Alternatives Program, which includes the Recreational Trails Program, from $850 million up to an average of $1.44 billion per year. So that is great news. It's not going to close that delta for us entirely, but it's a great step in the right direction. And also advocacy organizations like People for Bikes and many, many other kind of trail user and outdoor recreation advocacy groups are collaborating for better trail and path signage, education, and trainings. So we talk very frequently with International Mountain Biking Association, IMBA. We talk to so many of those kind of trail organizations that are at a national and local and regional level about, okay, how can we collaborate to make sure everybody's having a great time out on these trails and that we don't pit one recreational form against another. The other piece to better understanding how to fight this narrative of, you know, we have too many people out there, e-bikes are the new thing, let's get rid of the e-bikes that are on these paths and trails, is to really show the data on safety, e-bike safety. So People for Bikes commissioned a white paper a couple of years ago around e-bike safety. We definitely need to develop more research on this topic, but that white paper showed that compared to conventional bicycle riders, e-bike riders ride slightly faster in mixed traffic and ride slower in congested pathways. So a lot of the user conflicts that we hear about in the media and that we can hear about anecdotally are about, someone buzzing someone else on a path. This research showed that that's on average, not something that happens that frequently, but still something we need better data on. We know that electric bicycles are designed to be as safe as traditional bicycles and that they benefit so many people who may be discouraged from riding traditional bicycles due to a variety of different concerns. One thing that PeopleForBikes is working on is really integrating all these different pieces of building a social movement to support long-term sustainable outdoor recreation of all kinds. We started with a super fun video. It's called Before You Ride. It's on YouTube. If you, I will send these slides out afterward. And if you click on this QR code, it will send you straight to the video. It's a really nice kind of introductory video for like, okay, if you're riding a traditional bike or an e-bike, here are best practices. Make sure that your bike is charged. Make sure that the tires are full. Make sure that you know the right hand signals and etiquette and verbal cues for when you are riding on these paths and you're passing people and you're in these more congested areas. So it's not a finger waggy kind of like you're doing everything wrong type of video. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be distributed. We'd love to have retailers and riders and others kind of help get the message out about this video. It's just, it's fun and it kind of helps address the issue we were talking about earlier, in that there are so many more new and beginner riders that are out there that need to know kind of, here's how we can best enjoy the trail together. And it's got a reference to Freddie Mercury, so how could that be a bad thing? Another thing we're working on is gathering more research. So we're doing 2 pilot studies this year, one in Southern California and one in New England. The one in Southern California is really looking at what's happening on these beachfront paths. We know that California is a hotspot for a lot of these conversations on e-bike ridership, and municipalities are really trying to figure out like, okay, how do we incorporate them? Do we incorporate them into our plans and onto our trails? So we want to get the data to figure out like, okay, what is happening on the ground? We know there are a ton of e-bike riders in Southern California already. Are we actually seeing conflicts on the ground, or is there a disconnect between kind of user experience and user perceptions of, you might be afraid of somebody buzzing you, but are you actually going to get buzzed? Maybe not. So this is the kind of research that we're commissioning this summer in Southern California. And then New England, we're looking really at trails. So we're working with multiple different partners on the ground in New England to do a trail study of both user perceptions and impacts, the environmental impacts of e-mountain bikes on trails. So a big piece of, again, figuring out how do we make America the best cycling nation in the world is setting that baseline and making sure we have that data that can help inform where we move forward and what the real issues are. And then finally, we're also creating resource and data toolkits for a variety of different audiences. We're looking to talk to parents, we're looking to talk to new riders, we're looking to talk to retailers so we can really help give those resources that are useful as you are getting these bikes into the hands of these riders. What kind of information do you need? How can we make sure that people are riding safely, are storing their bikes safely, are charging their e-bike safe? I've said safe too many times, safely. So my big ask again today is reach out to me, please. My email is ash@peopleforbikes.org. I will follow up with this after the webinar as well. Let us know what kind of resources you as the retailers need in terms of safety, in terms of talking to your consumers, talking to your customers. What's the best way to reach them? We have ideas, but again, I want to make sure that the whole bicycle ecosystem is engaged in this conversation so that we can make sure that everyone's having a great time out on the trails. And with that, I am done with the presentation portion of this webinar.
Perfect. If you have any questions, we would love for you to put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we can get to them here. But if nobody right now has any questions, we would love if you could email us at info@nbda.com, or like Ash said, email her, ash@peopleforbikes.com. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Ash, for being here and presenting for us. We really appreciate it. And we hope that people reach out and stay connected. And so with that, we will say good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.